Well, hey there, welcome to Worth It Wednesday. Every Wednesday we send a principle worth learning, a question worth answering, and a recommendation worth taking. Today's principle is that feedback provides information, not identity. And like so many of the best principles that we send as part of this email series, this one is one that I learned by screwing up. and so I want to tell you about the story where this really came from. It was the first time ever that I spoke on a stage with more than 1,000 people in the audience, and what an incredible experience that is. Just mind-blowing, and was the type of work that I had wanted to do for so long. And specifically, this was when I worked for EntreLeadership. I got to host the EntreLeadership Summit event, which, man, that audience, I think it was like 4,000 people, just incredible leaders. The people that were speaking from the stage that I got to introduce were just like mind-blowing, and it was just an unbelievable experience that I worked really, really hard to prepare for. And it happened over the course of 3 or 4 days, and I felt like it went really, really well, which that was also super exciting, right? And it ended, and I was just kind of on this high after the event, and people had told me, oh, good job, good job, good job. What I didn't know had happened is that the team had sent a survey to everyone in attendance and just asked them their thoughts on the event. And one of the questions that included in the survey gave people the opportunity to give their thoughts on the host, the MC, who just happened to be me. And I didn't realize this happened, but a couple weeks later, the team emailed me and they said, hey, we got survey results in. Here's the answers that pertain to you. And so I scrolled down, and at first there was like an overarching score, like people ranked on a 1 to 10 the effectiveness of the host or something like that. And thankfully, people's score kind of aligned with my expectations of what I thought had happened, right? It was a strong score, and I was really happy with that because I had worked really hard and prepared really hard, and I felt like the score reflected the way that I performed. But then there was a comment section, and man, I started scrolling down through the comments, and I was just completely blindsided. I wasn't blindsided by the fact that there were some negative comments, because I mean, anytime you send a survey to 4,000 people and allow them to give their opinions on things, like, of course there's going to be some negativity. I was blindsided by how confused the comments made me. Because truly, like, this is not an exaggeration. It's like you would read something that said like, oh my gosh, I just love Alex's energy. He's so passionate, and I just love the way he emceed this event. And then right below it, you'd say, his energy is just way too much. This guy is obnoxious. I did not enjoy him as MC. And then there was literally another person that said, man, I just really appreciate Alex's authenticity. Like, he's just so genuine. And then literally right under it, it said, I just feel like he's not very authentic, and I couldn't trust a single word he said. I was like, what? I had no idea that was going to happen, where it was like, what is true? They're so diametrically opposed from each other. I was like, what do you do with this? And at first, I started asking, what does this mean about the summit? And what does this mean about me as an MC? But then the killer question was what I started to ask. I started to ask, what does this mean about me? I stopped asking, what does this mean about my performance? And I started asking, what does this mean about me as a person? And I started asking, okay, am I energetic or am I obnoxious? Am I authentic or am I untrustworthy? Am I genuine or am I disingenuous? And what was happening there is I wasn't getting information from the feedback, I was getting my identity from the feedback. And obviously that doesn't work out too well, because the feedback is so variable and so freaking confusing. So my identity became confused. But what's so honestly, it felt like a God thing, because this didn't happen that often. It was just so crazy. That afternoon, I had a conversation with Dave Ramsey, the owner of the company, right? Which you're probably familiar with him. He gets a fair amount of feedback, right? I think at the time that I left the organization, that radio show was going out to 16 million people a week. So people have opinions, as you could imagine. And so I was sitting down with him that afternoon, which didn't happen that often, but I was just asking him some questions about communication and leadership and personal growth and things like that. And in the back of my head, I'm like, I really want to ask him about this survey, because that was really on my mind, and I just didn't know what to make of it. And finally, I worked up the courage and I asked him, like, man, I know you, like, they send out surveys and you get the results too, and results on your talks and what you do and things like that. Like, what do you make of that? And I kind of asked, like, do you just ignore it? Like, do you just not pay attention to any of that and not even read it? Or do you read it but just move on? Like, what do you do with that? And he did one of his long, like, quintessential Dave Ramsey pauses where he looked up for a little bit and then he looked me dead in the eyes. He said, no, I read them every single time. And he said, and every single time it hurts my feelings just a little bit. But then he said, you know, sometimes those people might be saying some things that are right, and whether they're right or not, I've got to be aware of what they think. And then other times it's just like, okay, maybe they're not right and maybe I disagree with them, but regardless, it doesn't change who I am and what I do. At the end of the day, I've just got to move forward. He read the feedback, which is pretty good, but then he got information from the feedback. He didn't get his identity from the feedback because he knew who he was. And at the end of the day, he just had to move forward. You're gonna get feedback, period. Now you can be one of those people that says, oh, don't listen to the critics, right? La, 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 it's not the critic. No, don't be that person, okay? You've got tough enough skin, you can deal with critique, and that's part of leadership, okay? So it's not just like tune out the world around you, because that's how you become an incredibly isolated person, and that's not healthy or helpful. And some of them might be true, so it would be worthwhile to listen, right? So what you need to do is you need to be able to hear the feedback, you need to be able to listen to it, you need to get information from it, not identity. And at the end of the day, as Dave would say, you just gotta move forward. Remember, feedback provides information, not identity. Y'all have a killer Wednesday.